question. Even like
we joined this DTNS preview already in progress.
Where was Gamergate then? That's what I want to know.
That was back when the Gamergate was just the gate on your fence that your friends used to come and play games at your house.
Yeah, that was a college-going newlywed.
Everyone who's an old school gamer now is like is someone who grew up in the 80s, I guess, or no?
I guess
so.
Yeah, maybe late 70s, but
because old school gamers like playing Space.
Atari generation, Atari 2600 generation. I would say.
Yeah.
No, I would have to say later than that.
No, I'm Atari 2600 generation. I am not defining myself as a gamer, but people my same age are.
But you're not an old school gamer. You're like a Jurassic gamer, like me.
Oh, I see. I see. There's an even older class. I hadn't considered that. You're right.
There are stratas to this.
Yeah.
It's like layers of rock.
That's a good point. Layers of rock. Pre-Cambrian gamers.
Yes, we played shuffleboard and bridge.
Triassic gamers.
The Cretaceous.
Yeah, the Cretaceous gamers are the worst. Oh, they're the worst.
I hate those gamers that are right there on the KT boundary too, man.
Actually, I would say the extinction level event would have been 84, because that's, or at least in North America, because that's when like ColecoVision and Television.
Mm-hmm.
It's the year my dad's arcade business died, and the whole industry took a major poop until Nintendo the next year.
And it was weird because Atari just did not see it coming. Everyone was like, "Oh, Activision's just going to be putting out games left and right," and it was funny because how fundamentally, like, the leap was from like playing Pitfall 2, and then you go to play like Super Mario Brothers. It's like, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah, it was a weird shift.
Uh-oh, breaking news. Microsoft says Windows Phone not a focus this year.
Oh, I better stick with Samsung.
Oh. So, this is Tom Warren. By the way, Tom Warren, amazing commentary on the Verge Live blog for Build today. Highly recommended. He said I got a chance to speak with Terry Myerson, who runs Windows. Asked him about, you guys didn't say anything about phone, barely mentioned phone. And he said, we're fully committed to that 4-inch screen. There will be a time for it to be our focus, but right now it's part of the family, but it's not the core of where I hope to generate development interest over the coming year.
So you can take that a couple of ways. That them saying they don't think mobile is important in 2016, that's a weird thing to say, kind of, if that's what they're saying.
To me, it's more surprising that he's being that honest, of being like, oh yeah, we're way behind in that, so we're just gonna press pause on that for a moment because we can't catch up yet.
That's a good way to put it.
It's hard to build an entirely new hardware software.
Yeah, seriously, they should have just gone and bought a successful hardware. Oh, right.
Wait, were they actually successful at that point though? Weren't they on their?
No, I mean that's a really good point. They kind of bought them on the downslope, didn't they?
Yeah.
It's like I'm gonna invest in large, Buicks and Chrysler Cordovas.
Buick's coming back.
Chrysler Cordova.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Wasn't that the one that Ricardo Montalban flogged on TV?
It's the one my grandpa.
Did that have the rich Corinthian leather in it?
Yeah.
That right?
Yeah.
Didn't want to say vinyl, so someone came out with Corinthian leather.
How are the Corinthians doing now? How are they doing with leather?
That's a great thing. They no longer exist to kind of contradict the ad group.
Man,
all right.
Corinthian leather is biblical, man.
Yeah, man. Corinthian 1, 2, and now 3. All right, here we go.
This is a public DTNS announcement. A message in English will follow. Välkommen till showen med dagliga teknologiska nyheter med Tom Merritt och gäster. Jag heter Carl och är en av flera exekutiva medproducenter och alltså en av Toms chefer. Det kan du också bli genom att donera $1 eller mer i månaden på patreon.com.
This is the Daily Tech News for Wednesday, March 30th, 2016. I'm Tom Merritt. Joining me today, Mr. Scott Johnson of the Frog Pants Studios, The Instance, Boop, Extra Life Radio. I'm just going to keep going back and naming all your oldest shows.
So many. Yeah, do the old ones first and then the current ones last. And We'll all be better for
Are
it.
you and Andrew still doing the instance?
Nope, that ended a long time ago, but the instance still goes on, and I'll tell you what, it's never been better. And also, I'm here to build Tech News Rapport with you today.
I see what you did there, because we've got a lot of. Microsoft didn't have a big product announcement or an operating system upgrade to talk about, although they did have an upgrade, but they didn't bring out Windows 10 or Windows 9 or Windows 11 or whatever. Never did bring out Windows 9. But they did have a lot of interesting announcements. We're going to run through those in the headlines, and then we're going to do something I'm deciding to call right this second, the Tim Sweeney report card.
Oh, all right. I like this. Tim Sweeney, of course, famous for the founder of Epic Games and considered one of the foremost voices in game tech in the world, really. And so I am very excited to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, he has been very critical of Microsoft Windows Universal Platform and called upon them at Build to say something to change his mind. So we're going to check in and see how Microsoft did. We don't have Sweeney here himself, but we know what he wanted. He wrote a very good VentureBeat article around it. Let's start with the headlines, though. Microsoft's announcements at Build conference keynote. Here's the summary. This summer, we'll get the anniversary update for Windows 10 for free if you already have Windows 10 installed. You may have heard it called Redstone. That's the one Redstone will become this. Windows 10 is currently installed on more than 270 million devices. It's also coming to Xbox One and bringing along with it Universal Windows apps, and every Xbox One will be able to be used as a development kit for Universal Windows apps.
Yeah, that's a big deal. We talked about this a bunch in pre-show prep and whether or not it makes sense. And you made a very compelling argument about what it means to have a big install base of a device capable of being a development kit in as many hands as it's in. And even though some of those homes may or may not be interested in using the device in this way, it's kind of a numbers game, and they'll end up with a really nice sort of, what do you want to call it? It's a side effect of this shift toward Xbox and this shift toward having Windows on everything. It'd be interesting how that all goes.
And something else someone pointed out to me is that having that developer kit on the Xbox means that you can also develop your game or your app for a bigger screen, right? If you're developing downstairs on a nice 26-inch screen, but you got the Xbox upstairs on a 65-inch screen, well, now you can turn that developer kit mode on the Xbox, take a look at your app and try it out up there while it's still in development.
Right, and the old school term development kit used to mean $3,000 or $4,000 maybe plus dollars for anything like that. When you're talking about a dedicated piece of hardware with dedicated software as a development platform, and now you're talking about a $350 plus or minus solution. That's a big deal. So it'll be interesting to see how that all fits. On the developer-centric end, Canonical has worked with Microsoft to integrate Ubuntu user space into Windows 10, including the ability to use Bash command line. This is a big deal for a lot of developers. Mark Shuttleworth described it as a reverse wine that translates Windows syscalls into Linux syscalls in real time. Microsoft also announced the desktop app converter that turns Win32.net apps into Windows Universal apps as well. Seems like a big push to get old stuff new again.
Yeah, the desktop app converter demo was pretty interesting because they just downloaded a game on Steam and then turned it into a universal app, which I was like, piracy, anyone? Hey, is that allowed? But the point was to say you could take an executable and turn it into a Windows Universal app straight from Win32. But I think the bigger news amongst a lot of folks is the fact that they won't have to use Cygwin or some other third-party install to run Bash on Windows. And you really, if you're into this, got to check out the description of this from the Ubuntu side, describing how they did this. It's not virtual machine. It's not any kind of container. It is best described as something like emulation, but the syscalls translation thing that you mentioned, Scott, is the direct explanation of it. It's able in real time, and I think Shuttleworth himself called it reverse wine. So it's really, really interesting, and it's going to be very convenient, I think, for people to have that. Besides Bash, which I think has already got a lot of people very excited that they can use the Ubuntu command line in Windows when they're developing, is what else they'll be able to do with this Ubuntu user space.
That is true. I know there are people right now hearing this going, well, sure, you say reverse wine, and all they hear in their heads is, oh, so really it is emulation. You can call it reverse all you want, but now we're going to have a system taxing non-native, sort of not really talking to the core of your hardware and having to go through a layer of something to get any work done. And they seem to be pretty bullish on the idea that that's not what this is. We're not talking about, like you said, this isn't virtual machine. And I think
they say it runs hot.
Yeah, whatever that means.
The way they described it. Yeah. The Cortana collection launched in the Windows App Store today to show off how many apps work with the digital assistant. They also announced in the anniversary update that Cortana will make more proactive suggestions based on what it knows about you from emails and texts and your calendar. Things like ordering lunch for you, arranging a car ride, sending receipts to an expense account. Cortana can also recommend more general time-related words, or use or understand more general time-related words like last night. One example was like, can you email Roger that Outlook presentation I was working on last night? I guess it'd be a PowerPoint presentation I was working on last night. And it will know to look at the last night and see that you were working on that PowerPoint presentation, remember that, and find that particular file. Cortana will soon be available from the lock screen and is coming to Xbox One as well.
Okay, so when you read all of that and read through what we know about what they said at Build, does it seem to you that, or at least, here's what I hope. I won't say what Microsoft is or is planning to do or not to do that they haven't already stated. But I want it to be something that can be, it doesn't have to be open source necessarily, but something that can be integrated very easily into other services. So your example of send this email to Roger, I love that idea, but what if I don't want to use Outlook or use Microsoft Mail services? What if I want to use my Gmail account, or what if I want to use...
and they're making Cortana's APIs available for other programs to work with it.
So it's all a matter, it sounds like it's a matter of those programmers, just integrating that into their stuff. And this could be the thing that finally makes Cortana take off in a way that only Halo could before. A
lot of their demonstration of Cortana was about Android and iOS, very tellingly, and talking about using Cortana on Android to do this and on Android to do that. So I think it's interesting that with Cortana particularly, and this has been the Satya Nadella way, to say, we want you to use this on whatever platform you're on, just as long as you're using our thing.
The cornerstone of the keynote was the Microsoft Bot Framework. This tool in preview lets developers build their own chatbots into apps. You can browse from a directory of pre-made bots or use the SDK on GitHub to get started. Skype will get chatbots built into the iOS, or into the iOS, into the desktop, iOS and Android, and its own Skype bot platform. Booking a hotel room, arranging delivery of cupcakes, that sort of thing. Lastly, the HoloLens development kit started shipping today as well. Back to this bot thing, though. You used an example this morning on TMS during your tech segment about me having a conversation with you, for example, and in that conversation, Skype being smart enough to recognize that we're talking about how hungry we are and that we want pizzas on their way. That is kind of what they're aiming for, that level of sort of, I don't know, kind of what people think the Echo is doing for them now when they buy something from Amazon, that same sort of integration into their and other other services through APIs.
Yeah, it's really smart in this particular instance, I think, for Microsoft to get into the bots as a service platform, because we talked on Monday with Matt Hartman about all the different startups that are using bot-like material, all the different platforms like WhatsApp that want to have you put your bots on their service. And what Microsoft is saying is like, hey, you want to be one of those apps? We can hook you up. We can use Cortana in there, or we can just use our bot platform. You can use our Azure platform to run your bots off of. It's bots as a service. So Microsoft very, very cleverly nestling themselves into that gap for companies who are like, well, we're not WhatsApp, but we'd like to be able to take advantage of this conversational platform. And what technology companies are banking on, and it is interesting to see if this is going to carry out, is that this sort of conversational platform is the next step in the evolution of the user interface, that we're moving on from apps to this sort of bot interaction. That's what Matt Hartman was talking about on Monday on the show. And I thought there was a really compelling example from Satya Nadella during his keynote today. It was mentioned in a Bloomberg article as well, that one of his executives' mother in China doesn't like apps. She doesn't like searching for apps. She doesn't like installing apps and learning how to use them, but she does everything on WeChat. Everything you can think of on WeChat, because that is conversational and she's comfortable with it. She already knows how to use WeChat. She uses it to message her son over in the United States who works for Microsoft, or her grandson, I guess. And so she's like, oh, but I can also pay for my groceries. Great, I'll do that. Oh, I can also get customer service on this thing that I need help with. I can do that. So there is something to it. And China is the place where this trend is catching hold the most. Be interesting to see how far it spreads. And Microsoft is in position to take advantage of it if it does.
I'm all for this because the only final thing I'd say about it is it seems like the next iteration of this, or at least an alternate track to what others have been pushing. So if others think Siri and Alexa and OK Google are the answer, that we need an automated voice talking assistant, this is suggesting that sure, some of that can be the front end, but what we're really talking about here is embedded chat bots that can do more for you. And if anyone's used Slack, you know what we're talking about in a very rudimentary way.
They compared Cortana to the browser, saying Cortana's the one that helps the bots talk to each other for you. Like that's a proxy for you.
Yeah, that's fascinating. However this stuff pans out, the process is going to be at least interesting, if not potentially evolutionary or revolutionary.
Now, there's one of you out there right now saying, yeah, Microsoft's really great with bots, like Tay. Ha! There's probably only one of you saying that, but just for you, just in time for its build bot announcement, Tay the chatbot reappeared on Twitter late Tuesday, mostly just repeating, "You are too fast, please take a rest." Also said some other alcoholic-inspired things. Microsoft said, quote, as a part of testing, she was inadvertently activated on Twitter for a brief period of time. And Satya Nadella acknowledged Tay in the keynote. They didn't shy away from that. They called her out by name and said, hey, yeah, we made some mistakes, back to the drawing board with Tay, but Tay isn't the only bot we're working on, and that's how we learn.
Also, you've said this a few times. I said it guesting on a tech show on Monday, and I really believe this. Yes, Tay came out, and yes, people took advantage of it and created a bit of a nightmare scenario in terms of what she was now saying back to people. But what a great learning experience that is. I don't think that's even a failure. I think that's like a chance to say, all right, well, in the real world with a bunch of people who like to watch the world burn, how is this thing going to respond? And now we can adjust things and change things. And, this really says a lot, I think, about how this sort of stuff will be used. You want to put it through this kind of rigor. So I have zero problem with that thing. I don't think it's the mistake. It's fun for people to make fun of it. I get it. But I think they're learning from this thing. And how could you not? A Nazi robot talking to people? You're going to learn some things.
Well, she wasn't a Nazi to begin with. The internet made her a Nazi.
Good point. We've all made her this way. Royal Dutch Airlines, a.k.a. KLM, announced it will send flight confirmation, boarding passes, flight status, and receive questions through Facebook Messenger. Passengers can take advantage of the service when they book tickets through KLM.com and agree to receive information through Messenger. Rollout starts today with the feature globally active and available in the coming days and weeks. Nice. More often this happens, the better for travelers, I say.
Yeah, it's better for travelers. This is more good news for Facebook Messenger. Like, we got one. We got a big airline. Got another one. I mean, it's not the first one to use Facebook Messenger, but it's a big one to use Messenger as the platform. I get text messages from airlines all the time. I use TripIt, get text messages from them. But Facebook Messenger becoming an option as well is a big win for Facebook.
Yeah, and like you were saying about WhatsApp or whatever, Facebook wants to be this thing that you use for everything. So
yeah,
a nice get for them.
Google engineer Benson Lung says on Google Plus that Amazon has banned USB-C cables not in compliance with the USB Implementers Forum standards. Lung is the guy, if you remember, who fried a Chromebook Pixel 2015 trying out USB-C cables that he bought on Amazon for cheap, and then ranted about the fact that these pieces of crap were being sold and warned people, like, be careful what you buy. Might blow out your computer.
Yeah, it's funny they should have this to talk about today, because I was just in the market for a 29-volt USB-C charger for my iPad Pro. The problem is the iPad Pro, with the one it ships with, it takes about 4.5 hours to fully charge, which is kind of terrible if you're using it for a business machine. You need
Wait, if iPad Pro doesn't use USB-C though?
It doesn't. But if you use, here's the
yeah, what's up with that?
Well, you can supposedly, there have been some, I read a few tests on a few tech sites that say if you get the MacBook Air, or excuse me, the MacBook, the newer MacBook with USB-C or USB-C, if you get that power adapter, that will charge the iPad Pro in about an hour, and will do fast charging on it. Apple sells this thing. It's something you can get. They don't. They even have a note on their website saying this can be used with the iPad Pro. Why they don't ship it with it, I don't know. But I went to Amazon thinking, all right, there's got to be an alternative, somebody out there, and man, the nightmare reviews you can find on like these really crappy sort of knockoff USB-C stuff. Like USB-C, we are really in that early time where please buyer beware, because there's just some crappy bamboo and cat hair version that came out of Taiwan. You do not want to put your computer in. You know,
right.
You don't want to put that in, so yeah.
And Amazon banning it doesn't mean they won't sneak onto the platform sideways somehow anyway, so still be careful, but it should be harder for them to get on now.
I agree. Motherboard reports on a CNBC blog post called Apple and the Construction of Secure Passwords. The idea was to teach users about constructing secure passwords. The execution was awful. It asked users to type in their passwords to test how secure they were. The form had no encryption. The passwords were sent in clear text to a Google Doc and shared with all advertisers on the page. CNBC has since taken the post down. Nice job, guys.
I mean, I don't know what to say. Obviously, the reporter probably is going to get all the brunt of the criticism, and the reporter, my guess is, was relying on his support staff to implement this. He probably said, hey, can I make a form that does this? This is my idea. I want to talk about making good passwords. And the tech support people let him down and said, yeah, okay, but make sure you make it clear for people not to put their real passwords in there, because we're not going to have a secure implementation. Or they should have made a secure implementation, but the way it was done was definitely awful. Like I can see where someone was thinking, oh, well, this will be to test passwords, but obviously people won't put their real passwords in there because that would be stupid. Yeah,
I mean, this feels like purest of intentions. Nobody's trying to mess anybody over here, but it just it could have used some consulting. Let's put it that way. Just anybody, just some guy who does something with passwords on some corporate level. Say, just come over here and just tell me real quick if this is a bad idea, and you could have probably saved a lot of
and if you used that form and put in any password that you actually use, you should definitely change those passwords
right now.
PC World. I think they should change their name because we need that in this day and age. PC World reports the U.S. ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, has identified 64 cases where the U.S. Department of Justice has requested cooperation from Apple or Google under the All Writs order to unlock mobile devices. ACLU trying to show like this is definitely not about one phone, although each case is only about one phone. 7 of the 9 Google cases involve Google asking Google for a password reset, not actually unlocking the phone, just resetting the password. 30 of the cases are from 2015 or later, and all of these are different than the 12 cases identified by Apple's lawyer Mark Zwillinger back in February when we first learned about the New York case and several others.
Well, so I know you guys have talked about this already, and I just want to bring it up again. I have a great metaphor for you. See if this sounds like something interesting.
Lay it on me.
I've got a friend who's got let's say I've got a box and it's got a key. It needs a key to get into the lock, and
you got a brand new pair of roller skates.
Yes, very good.
A brand new key,
and and in my box I have something that my friend needs very badly in order for him to in order for him to perform well at his skating competition. But I'm refusing let him get in there because I want to control the security of my box. Well, he then called me and said, he made all kinds of threats, but then he called me and said, hey, I think I found a way to get into your box, so I'm just going to get in there and take it. And then I say, well, wait, that's fine, but how'd you do it? Well, we're not telling you how I did it. Now,
the metaphor doesn't work for me because it's your box.
That's right, it is my box.
Because that changes everything.
It really does, yeah.
If you were the manufacturer of the box, and you're like, these boxes are very secure, and then your friend was like, I can't get into the box to get my skates. You need to help me out. And he's like, well, we make these boxes with a reputation of security. Then the metaphor works for me.
Does it? I guess what I'm saying, and I didn't mean to veer it so far from the actual topic of this post, but is there any precedence for them figuring out how to unlock the phone and now share that information with the manufacturer?
Yes, all kinds, all the time. In fact, there's an entire protocol set up called the Vulnerabilities Protocol that we mentioned yesterday on the show, that is meant to ease the fact that law enforcement will find ways to break into encryption and technology, and there should be a path to share that with manufacturers in a responsible way that allows law enforcement to continue to do their jobs well, but also doesn't undermine the security of the products. This is nothing new at all. This is just something nobody else was thinking about before, or not nobody else, but most people weren't thinking about before. We don't. People who don't follow security very closely think that things are less secure in some cases than they are, and more secure in some cases than they are. And the fact that a company somewhere has figured out a process to get around the iPhone 5C's old operating system way of protecting things is not surprising at all. It was surprising to me it took that long.
Well, if you're telling me people need to get educate themselves and learn more about things, then I don't even know what this.
Well, you have to know it's always going to be an arms race. Yeah. The question is, how easy is it for someone to do the same method that the FBI used to break into the iPhone 5C? My guess is it's not very easy. You probably have to have physical access to the phone, which is always a big thing. If they have to have physical access to your phone, then it's a much less of a concern for you in your day-to-day life unless you lose your phone. They probably had to have physical access to the phone, and it was probably intensive to be able to do it, and it took time. And those are things that most of us probably won't have to worry about because we'll hold on to our phones and we won't be worth the trouble in most cases.
Yeah, and if it's easy, Apple would probably already what they did.
But I do think it would be irresponsible of the Department of Justice or the FBI or the company Celebrite, maybe not, to not eventually disclose this to Apple in good time. Like the vulnerabilities protocol says, look, we need to balance the need to be able to do these things to fight crime with the need to educate technology companies about the vulnerabilities. So I think that the FBI should tell Apple. I don't claim to know exactly how long they should wait or how severe this particular vulnerability is.
Foxconn Technology Group, you know them as Foxconn, has agreed to purchase a controlling stake in Sharp, you know, the guys that made my rad boombox in 1985, for 389 billion with a B yen. That's 3.5 billion US. That's 100 billion yen less than an agreement that was almost reached a month ago before Sharp divulged full details on liabilities. Foxconn, by doing this, will buy 66% of Sharp for 88 yen a share. A clause will still let Foxconn buy the Sharp display business if the deal falls apart before October 5th. Foxconn is positioning itself to sell products to customers, or it's to sell its products, I guess.
Right now they make parts and they assemble products for others. They want to make their own products and sell them.
And Sharp has provided. Doesn't Sharp do a lot of? Well, they used to. I don't know if
they do a lot of Sharp products because they have a lot of sharp minds.
Right. That's what they've always told me. But they made, like, if you went and bought a TV at Costco, for example, and it wasn't Sharp brand, there was a really good chance that you were getting a Sharp display anyway.
Yeah, that may have been true for a while. I don't remember, but it sounds right. Those kinds of things come and go. Right now, it's the Insignia brand from Best Buy, which I think they just have assembled directly at plants. I don't know whether it's Sharp or not, but yeah. I mean, Sharp makes lots of things, not just monitors and television screens as well. But obviously, because they want the display business, Foxconn is buying it mostly for that. And that's what it's most famous for.
I'm just saying every kid in high school is jealous of my boombox. That's all I'm going to say about Sharp.
Yeah, because you had a Sharp boombox.
Dang right.
BizTech Africa reports a team of 10 software engineering students led by Joseph Kitamarike at Makerere University in Uganda have developed a device to start a car with a fingerprint. The device is called Kwanza Gari, Swahili for start a car. The system has a GSM code system to allow starting the car by SMS as a backup. Students are patenting the system right now, and they hope to bring it to market and sell it for somewhere between $250 and $300.
Oh, well, that's not bad. Well, maybe it is. I don't know if that's good or bad, but price.
So you're basically replacing the starter, if I understand it right, so that you don't use a key anymore. You use your fingerprint. And then if the fingerprint system fails for some reason, you can have it send an SMS using the GSM network, and then and you'll have a verified phone that you can say, yeah, okay, start the car.
That seems, more secure than a key. Somebody else could have your key and use it, and they don't have your thumb necessarily. So I'm sure some of this stuff is hackable. But I love this kind of thing, so I'm all about like finger sensor the only way it'll start stuff. And man, isn't it great that we have an archaic technology like SMS that's been around forever and gets charged by the text by some carrier still, and it's kind of stupid in a lot of ways, but it's become this awesome second and third factor authentication and security tool that none of us thought we needed. I love that. It's like email in the mid-aughts was that. It was like, oh, we'll just use email to verify everybody's real.
Yeah.
Now it's SMS all the time, and I kind of love that. It's like
I also love the idea of 10 software engineering students going like, I want to start my car with a thumbprint. Let's make this happen. Let's figure this out. They don't know they're not supposed to be able to do that, so they do that.
Sharp minds.
Yeah, they are sharp minds. Hey, thanks to all who submitted things to our subreddit today. Captain Kipper, SP Sheridan, both had stories in here. You could have one too, or you could at least vote. Submit your stories and vote at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. That's a look at the headlines. All right, so I'm going to set you up, Scott, and I want you to grade Microsoft for me.
All right.
If you remember, back on March 4th, Tim Sweeney called out Microsoft in The Guardian, saying that they were locking down the PC ecosystem. Phil Spencer and Kevin Gallo, both from Microsoft, said, no, we're a fully open ecosystem. Sweeney in VentureBeat laid out a more detailed response saying, look, here's the problem. At Windows 10 launch, it was open to all Universal Window Platform apps, but you had to turn on developer mode to execute them. You had to go into the start menu, then into settings, then into update and security, then choose for developers, then you could turn on developer mode. He's like, that's buried. That's not user friendly. He's like, and so therefore, unlike Win32 apps, if I want to distribute my app, I basically have to put it into the Microsoft store or educate my audience how to go do this crazy setting change. So November 2015, Microsoft made sideload default. And in fact, Kevin Gallo made reference to that. He's like, back in November, we made sideloading the default on Windows 10. That means the apps don't have to be from the Windows Store. But Sweeney points out, they still have to be signed by Microsoft with Microsoft DRM on them, which means to distribute them, you still have to send them to Microsoft. He's like, that's still not okay. There's plenty of other security certificate authorities that could sign these things and make them secure. So March 10th, VentureBeat, he said, here's what I think Microsoft needs to do. Support installation from any source, support digital signing from any certificate authority, not just Microsoft, allow third-party stores to install, update, and uninstall Universal Windows program apps, no restrictions on net connectivity for third-party apps or commerce, where you have to go through the Microsoft Store to do in-app purchases, and stop calling non-Microsoft Store installations sideloading. That he's like, that just makes people think they're weird and unusual. Okay. So he was saying at the very end of this VentureBeat article, Scott, I hope to hear new things at the Build Conference.
Well, let's see if we heard any new things at the Build Conference. First of all, I just want to say this about Sweeney's presentation in that VentureBeat article. He made a really good, strong case in my mind about, you hear this all the time, about software and development being a form of speech. And you would never want to have to run your speech by some authority every time you wanted to say something. You'd still want to be able to present your speech in a safe way and all these other kinds of things, but you don't want somebody else telling you what you should or shouldn't say, and it's kind of tantamount to what he's talking about with software. I really like that. Today at Build, Terry Myerson, Executive Vice President for Windows and Devices at Microsoft, said this. Here's the quote. This is an open platform. It is an open ecosystem of hardware and software developer partners. It has been for over 30 years. Nothing changes with the Universal Windows platform, and then said there has never been a better time to be a Windows developer. So in a pretty bald-faced way said, nothing changes from the last 30 years. I still think there's probably some technicalities there. Like, for example, saying that on Build didn't make everyone's Windows 10 installs magically change any defaults or any kind of things that you're committing to as a developer immediately. But I guess it's nice to hear him say those words. Nadella made reference to Windows is open for everyone. He made a comment about that in his speech, his talk. And Desktop App Converter takes Windows 32 apps and games and converts them to Windows 10 apps in the Windows App Store. There is still a submission process, which they haven't detailed yet, which again doesn't answer some of the questions that Tim Sweeney asked, and they announced conversion toll for converting Win32 apps to UWP. Again, none of this addresses some of those core questions, which you laid out in 5 very simple steps. And I like that Sweeney basically said this. He said, I would be happy to be called paranoid about this whole thing, like a paranoid, crazy person. some words like that in his article. But I don't think he is, and I think he's actually being very, I don't know, forthright about what the actual.
So hold on. So what Microsoft said today is we're an open platform. We're totally open. You can submit your things to our store. I think they get an F from Tim Sweeney.
Yeah, I think so.
They didn't do any of the things he asked for.
Yeah, I mean, if they are, they're not saying it. So that's one thing. Benefit of the doubt.
Fair enough. They didn't say it in the keynote.
Sure. Exactly. Maybe at the end of this week, or maybe at some other point, we get more details. They have sit-down interviews with somebody. Maybe that stuff becomes more clear, like sometimes that stuff often does. But as it stands, based on what they said on stage today, all they did was say, "Yeah, we're open. Trust us. We're good," and then moved on. And that is definitely not enough for what he's asking. And I think what he is asking is indicative of the larger development community, not just games, not just gaming. In fact, he very much spoke from a place that wasn't specific to gaming in this article. He's speaking from a position of, we want a robust, vibrant platform that is open and secure. And he even compliments them and says, look, what they're trying to do with their form of security is a noble thing. It's a thing you want to chase. But this is just the wrong way to do it. So to answer your ultimate question, did Tim Sweeney's questions get answered? The answer is no. They gave face service to the overall question of, is this an open platform? But no details. None of the technicalities were addressed. And again, if they can do that off stage somewhere, great. We'll have to wait and see. But if you're giving them a grade, probably a D- to an F is my thinking.
Yeah, W. Scottus 1 says, okay, devil's advocate, how would that work on Windows Phone if they don't have their universal apps in the App Store without lowering your shields and sideloading? And that's a fair point, but I would say that's really easily dealt with by saying the Windows Phone implementation could have a different default. The fact that it's a universal Windows 10 platform is sort of a misnomer. It's not like it's exactly the same code in every case. It knows what screen size it's on. It knows what processor it's on. So it is universal in some respects. But they could say, well, when we're on a phone or a tablet, we're going to make the default be it has to come from the Windows Store, and you can change it if you want at your own risk. And then when we're on a PC, desktop, or a laptop, and there's a little overlap there, a little debate over what's a laptop and what isn't, I get that. But for the most part, say, here, we're going to allow anybody to do a third-party store, and Microsoft could even do authorized third-party stores. What's happening is Microsoft is trying to play the iOS Android game while also applying it to the desktop, which historically doesn't play that game of, we are going to have everything run through an app store.
Well, and
OS 10, by the way, OS 10 has the same issue, the exact same issue. And
I was going to bring that up. Let's look at the case of Apple, both iOS and OS 10. They're both platforms that are very much this stuff in place. iOS especially. It is, I'm not going to call it a walled garden, but it's if you want to do your app and you want to put it on that platform, a popular platform for your app, you have to adhere to the basic core of what Apple's restrictions are. And you have to submit to Apple for approval. There are certain things you have to do. And we would all be complaining just as loudly about that if that wasn't already a precedent. I wonder how much of this is that. So, for example, you're taking 30 years of PC history and saying, oh, well, no, we're gonna narrow all that in, and you're gonna have to submit to us now. That's the crime here, is that they're changing for a lot of people, isn't it?
Yeah. I think Lau Roman has a brilliant observation. He says, but everything runs through an app store. The most popular Linux distributions have app stores. Mm-hmm. We've got a new Ubuntu user space in Windows 10. Apps get that stuff all day long.
That's right.
Just start running Linux things. I don't know. Okay. There's something there, though. Okay. But yeah, no, there's no reason not to allow other app stores, and to, and in Linux you certainly can't, it doesn't prevent you from downloading an app outside of the app store. There's nothing wrong with having the app store. It's just required or de facto required, which is what Tim Sweeney's saying.
I feel like Sweeney basically did what they tried to say at Valve when Valve threw a real canary about Windows 8 and its plans for universal app development. He's just doing it in a way more controlled, focused, very logical, non-emotional perspective, and I really appreciate that, and it reads really well. So if you are not completely at this age of the internet averse to reading a relatively long article, about this issue, I really recommend that VentureBeat article. It's really
Then Tinvec says, we all see how well that worked for NPM. Just settle down. Not everybody's NPM. And yes, package managers are not the same as abstract. All right, pick of the day comes from Gadget Chaser in Manassas, Virginia. Writes, regarding managing extensions in Chrome, I'd like to recommend Simple EXT Manager in the Chrome Web Store. I've been using it for probably about 9 months. It's indispensable for configuring and customizing Chrome depending on my task or workstation. It allows you to turn on and off your extensions at will without having to go into Chrome settings. So if you sync your Chrome installations, all the extensions will show up on every installation, but sometimes you sit down at the desktop and you're like, I really don't want that on, but I don't want to have to dig through settings every time to turn it off. This gives you an easy way to do that. You can even group them together, so you can create groups of extensions you can activate or deactivate as a batch. He says, I have a group I use at work, which has different limitations on what I can do on the internet, a group for security, a group for research, a group for communication. You can activate extensions one at a time or by the group or by both. You can back up and import your groups through a simple backup file in the options. It's invaluable to me for managing extensions. It also doesn't make me feel too guilty about trying new extensions, knowing I can turn them on or off at will, especially if performance is an issue. So check it out in the Chrome store. That's Simple EXT Manager.
Yeah, it's like workspaces and Photoshop. All us Adobe folk have known this for a long time, and that's awesome. Sounds like a really good deal.
Send your picks to us, folks. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. You can find more picks at dailytechnewsshow.com/picks. James C. Smith, who's one of our analyst level backers, thanks, boss, is also a mobile game developer down in Irvine and says, had an interesting discussion yesterday about free-to-play mobile games. That 0.23% number got a lot of attention. But first, let's remember that is what percent of players generate just half the revenue. The other half the revenue is generated by more players. 2.3% of players spend real money in these games. Now, I had different numbers yesterday. If I can look back here real quick, I was seeing not 0.23%, but 1.9% of players in February paid, and that it was a 0.19% were 48%. But that's kind of quibbling, because really his point is sound, which he says 60% of players try the game once and never play it again. 90% stop playing within the first 30 days. There are some players who play for a long time and never pay, but they are less than 10%. Having even only 1.9% of the game downloads generate revenue isn't that different than premium games that have free demos. 10 years ago, I was making downloadable demos for my premium games, and the industry standard was for 2% of the trial downloads to convert to sales. When players can download another free trial in an instant, it takes a lot to convince them that a game is worth spending money on. That was true of premium games 10 years ago and is still true for free-to-play games today.
Agree with this guy 100%. Also,
Yep.
I trust anybody who works in Irvine. I don't know why, it's just Blizzard's there, I guess. But anyway,
Blizzard Halo. Well, because you're in their pocket.
I think this is. I was talking to Patrick about this offline. This is such a numbers game, and look, it's the way that weird ecosystem works. I'm not saying it's super awesome or not volatile or couldn't be better or any of those things. It is the nature of that beast, and so people are wrangling the beast the best they can.
Yeah. And then we got a note from Andy, who's like, you guys keep referring to Nick as a collection of plugins, but he's like, you can use some of them without plugging them in. I tested them all. Analog FX Pro 2, Color FX Pro 4, HDR FX Pro 2, and Silver FX Pro 2 are able to open image files and apply their filters. Define 2 and Sharpener Pro 3 and Viveza 2 do not seem to have a way to open a file without being used as a plugin. He says, I use them as plugins, but the ones I most use are ones that can be opened individually.
Oh, well, all right then.
Yeah. You don't use any of the Nick plugins.
I don't use any of this stuff. No, and I promise I'm not some kind of Adobe elitist or anything. I'm just in that ecosystem to the point that I don't think I could ever get out. So this stuff's a little foreign to me.
And then Big Jim wrote with a link to a story from American Shipper that Amazon is opening a fulfillment center in Edgerton, Kansas, which is near Kansas City. And he thought this was significant for 3 reasons. One, that frees up the majority of space in their other distribution centers, and Kansas is a good central location with access to a rail hub. So he was saying your heavy items, your big items can come out of Kansas, and you've got room for the smaller items on the periphery. Number 2, transit time to Kansas is about the same from the East Coast or LA, giving them flexibility on how they want to ship, so they can get to the central warehouse either way. And he says labor is cheaper than it is on the coasts in Kansas, so it saves him a little money too. His summary statement was, I cannot state this enough, Amazon is a company that is making a ton of good moves building up their infrastructure right now, and this is one of them.
Well, you got to put those echoes someplace, Tom.
That's right. I don't know. Echoes are small, though.
True, especially those new ones.
Televisions. A lot of televisions. Got to stick those somewhere. Well, thank you, Scott Johnson, for joining us. What is going on in the Frog Pants universe these days?
Tons of things. Today, I'll just tell people that if you like a daily show like you do here on the Daily Tech News Show, you might also like a daily morning show. Fill your day with daily content, I would say. So head on over to frogpants.com/TMS. That's short for the morning stream. It's a show I do every Monday through Thursday, twice on Thursdays, in fact. With Brian Ibbett, my good friend and co-host, and host of many other great podcasts, and we do it every day. Tom's on there Wednesdays talking about tech. We have guests all week. If you want a morning show that you wish you always had, I think this might be the one, so go check it out, frogpants.com/TMS.
Yeah, definitely tune in on Wednesdays. That's the best day. But the rest of the days are pretty good, too.
Yeah, unless you ask Justin, and then Tuesdays are the best. And if you ask Veronica, she'll say Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you to everyone who supports the show. DailyTechNewsShow.com/support has links to our store, has links to support us on PayPal, or Patreon.com/DTNS. If you are a backer at the $5 a month level, that we call that the quarter backer level because it averages out to be 25 cents per episode, you get access to the treasure chest, and that is where we put our full recordings of the pre and post show. We put special recordings in there. In fact, Chris Christensen does tech and travel that we put at the end of the audio show. So if you listen to the audio episode, you're going to hear that in just a second. But if you're watching the video, or if you miss it and you want to get just it alone, you can find that in the treasure chest if you are a patron at the 25 cent per show level, $5 a month level, patreon.com/DTNS. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. Phone number 593-2459. That's 512-593-2459. The show's live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern at alphageekradio.com and diamondclub.tv. You can visit our website, dailytechnewsshow.com. Back with the aforementioned Justin Robert Young tomorrow. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Boom, 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 boom.
Hey, did you buy the Warcraft movie? That wasn't you in the draft, was it?
No, I didn't get Warcraft.
Okay.
You know what's funny? People still consider buying a movie in the draft to be a show of support for the movie. I would have totally bought Warcraft at the right price.
Yeah.
I am also and separately excited to watch the Warcraft movie.
Yeah, it's possible to actually be both.
Yeah.
A smart buyer of the film or avoider of the film, but someone looking forward to seeing it.
All right, so titles.
Yes. Lay them on me, brother.
Well, so the top is Bash on Windows 10.
Mm-hmm.
The following one is Bashing Windows.
I mean, those one or the other of those seems like a lock, but keep going.
All right, so go home, Tay, you're drunk. That's pretty funny. Scott Johnson can't get into his box. What's in the box? Micro Nux, Winbuntu, all your bots belong to us. Microsoft bashes build, Windows 10. Remember, wasn't there Windows?
Yeah, Windows was that was a Michael Robertson thing, wasn't it?
Gosh, that's a long time ago.
There's also Windows blinds. Cortana fights for the bots. Amazon says USB-C you later.
That's funny.
Micro so fail. USB-C you later. PC Peace World. Bamboo and Cat Hair USB-C. Yeah. Foxconn gets sharp. You had a
Sharpens up.
That one's not bad.
Stop the side loading.
The reference to that parody of the G.I. Joe PSAs where the computer says stop all the downloading. That's very obscure. That's very obscure, but I think that's funny.
Don't call it a side load. It's been here for years.
I'm a sucker for that joke.
That one's not bad.
I have to say.
Bots as a service. Bash. So the top three right now are Bash on Windows 10. Scott Johnson can't get into his box. And go home, Tay, you're drunk.
Well, I would say bashing Windows or bash on Windows 10 are my two favorites because they apply to Tim Sweeney as well as the literal inclusion of Bash in Windows 10.
I would say Bash on Windows 10.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
Because it's top.
It's top, and I like it, and it's appropriate to two parts of the conversation without being a mashup title, which is very elegant.
Mm-hmm.
So well done to Beatmaster and Silverblade for their variants on that.
Most people already know I can't get into my box. That's a long known. We all have a history. It's fine. We don't need to share that with the
And
world.
then I had to bring Melanie into it, and that just threw me off.
Right.
I shouldn't have. Then I had that song stuck in my head while you were trying to explain the metaphor. And I was like, what have I done to myself?
Start singing out loud. It's the only way to get rid of
I
it.
got a brand new pair. Oh my gosh, it's the worst song.
It really is, but it's hard not to.
I don't even know what song that is.
Oh,
and it sounds obnoxious.
Go look it up on YouTube and then hate me for listening to it.
What is the title?
Covers of
Brand
it.
New Key by Melanie.
Yeah.
Melanie's great, by the way. My first introduction to her was that song, and I was like, ugh, I refused to listen to anything by Melanie, and then I found some other things by Melanie, and I realized, oh, she's actually really good. I got no problems with Melanie, but the song, I've got a brand new pair. It's actually not a bad, composition.
How many NCIS? Oh, it's Law and Order. How many places have a naval investigative unit?
Yeah.
I'm not sure why you're asking that.
This song's never going to leave my head now.
Oh, I could hear it in the background even. It's kind of country. It's actually not as bad as I
It's
remember.
folky. Oh, okay, I know the song.
Yeah. It's quirky.
It just reminds me of Patchouli. I'm sorry.
Sure.
There's a really good metal cover of it that Ibit played once on the morning show. It's
Oh,
really,
yeah?
Yeah.
Nice.
It's actually kind of great.
It's it's weird. Like the only band I can say I appreciate out of that era, like that's still I would actively see if I see it somewhere like in a store. I might buy this. Is anything from the band?
Mm. Oh, the band, yeah.
The band.
Take a load off.
The band, I used to hate them because of
I really love that song for some reason.
and I really didn't like Live either because their name was Live. I hated that. Who are you listening to? Live? I'm like, no.
And you hated The Who because...
It was like they were all trying to perpetuate the Who's on First thing in band names. I hate it. The band.
What's wrong with Who's on First?
It's okay if you're in the mood for Abbott or Costello or both. But as it turns out, as a band name, it doesn't work.
Aren't they just a reimagining of Laurel and Hardy?
Yeah, kind of. I know that there's a lot of
contemporaries. I'm not sure if one was a ripoff of the other. Or...
Yeah,
I always thought Laurel and Hardy came like at least
might have.
5-6 years before.
Something like that. They're the Coke and Pepsi of their day. They're actually it's closer to something like like GoBots and Transformers, probably.
Yeah.
Voltron and Battle of the Planets.
There you go. I always confuse those, by the way. I am so excited about that new Voltron series. I am so excited.
I don't know. The last one they tried to redo was stupid. And
I agree. I got
mind-numbingly stupid.
The people involved are cool, and Netflix seems to get this stuff.
Maybe. So this is the important thing. If you've ever watched Voltron, like the original, what do they call it? Some Five Beast Go Lion or whatever. It was a really violent, Japanese cartoon. And they totally sanitize it for release in the U.S. and other markets. If they go in with the original intent, like, yeah, we're going to make it really kind of balls of the wall, kind of like slashy, blood, guts, and everything, that would be cool. But if they're just going to give you kind of a play school version of it, I don't think it'll be as cool because that's what made the original Voltron so cool. Because you knew, no, those weren't robots getting killed by the scores. Those are alien beings with blood because you could see it.
Yeah, there are people in there.
Ooh, my Amazon Tap arrives tomorrow.
Oh, lovely. Is that the one that's it's a little flat echo, right?
It's the Echo without the speaker, although
Right.
it does have a small cardioid speaker, I think, in it, so that you can attach it to your own speaker. And then there's the mobile one that's coming too, which I can't remember the name.
Yeah, what is that called? Amazon Point? No, Dot. No.
Yeah, the Dot. No, wait. Tap is the Tap is. I'm sorry, I had it backwards. Tap is the one that's mobile. Dot is the one that doesn't have the speaker.
Okay, that's it. That's the one that just gives you.
I'm gonna put Dot in the bathroom because I don't need a big speaker in there. I have an old speaker that I can plug it into.
Yeah.
And then I can add things to the shopping list like shampoo and soap.
And you just say, Alexa, I've fallen and I can't get up. And that way,
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you just said.
You know what? If
playlist of some stupid band.
playing song "Falling" by Tom Petty from Tom Merritt's playlist.
it'd be great if you could control your Roombas, because maybe you could like get Roombas to push me up into sitting position.
Yeah, get all your home automation to save you. Love that.
Get my Hamilton Beach mixer to
I got
turn
really
on.
excited that it works with Nest now, and then I was like, "What am I gonna do?" Like, Amazon, tell Nest things feel pretty good in here. Thanks.
Playing Foo Fighters from.
The thing was, I would have totally used it. I would have played Foo Fighters. I would have used the Amazon Nest integration when I first got the Nest, and I was constantly teaching it. But Nest does a pretty good job for me now, especially now that it knows I'm here, even when I'm not upstairs. And so I don't really have anything to do to it.
Yeah.
Nest knows me better than I know myself, Scott.
I feel like Nest knows me better, knowing you better, knowing better.
Knowing me, knowing you. Playing
There.
Knowing Me, Knowing You by ABBA from Scott Johnson's Amazon Music playlist.
Ordering 2 crates of toilet paper, just like your kid did last time.
I go to Costco for that stuff. That's just a once in a month. Or
Well, we do too, but Nick ordered it as a joke because he wanted to see if it worked, and it did. Because I had said to the kids when we got it, I said, "All right, you guys, just so you know, this thing can like totally order stuff from Amazon." He didn't believe me, so him and his knucklehead friend, ordered toilet paper, and thought it didn't work. And then we got toilet paper like 4 days later.
was it cheaper or about the same price as?
Well, didn't you get the email saying that it had been ordered?
Kim did. I didn't get it.
Oh, Kim got it. Okay. And
Not
she
enough.
and she was like, "Oh, I guess we ordered toilet paper.
Yeah,
I
it
always
was-
use it."
Yeah, it's not like we're not a thing we're not going to ever use. So
Yeah.
we kept it, and it was about the same price, Roger. And in the end, but
In the end,
Ah,
but Costco's right up the street. So
playing "The End" by Beatles from TuneIn Radio.
don't ask her to play AC/DC unless you have a bunch of that already purchased, because she'll play karaoke versions of AC/DC.
no. What they need is Alexa integration with LegalZoom.
Yeah, that'd be all right.
Alexa, draw me up a contract.
Oh, I'd love that. Print it down.
Alexa, divorce papers.
Alexa, negotiate new rate.
I want to talk to her, or whatever I'm going to talk to. I want to talk to him at the same casual way that Miller talks to his phone on The Expanse.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's when we're in, man. When you can just go, I don't want to see this one. Show me the next.
That's what Cortana is promising.
Yeah, we'll see. I find myself being too enunciated as it is, and I don't even need to. Siri does a fine job of dictating what I say. It's just I get like, if I'm doing a text and I want to say
Playing
it,
What I Say by Ray Charles.
I'll be Tom, give me a call at 3 p.m. space.
Oh yeah.
Like, I need to stop acting like I'm talking.
It's funny. I don't use any of that stuff, but Brian Brushwood does. And when I was hanging out with him during South by Southwest, it was amazing. Like I knew instantly what he was doing when he'd be like, "I will be there in 5 minutes." Period. I'm like, "Oh, you're definitely not talking to me. You're talking to your phone."
All right. That's pretty funny.
I'm uploading the show.
Guy on Twitter says I don't do very good metaphors.
Well,
He
that's like saying, well, that would be a simile. See, maybe you do really good similes.
He says, "Why is Scott Johnson so bad at metaphors, Ace Detect? Arrgh, get DTNS." And then he says, and I said, "You mean bad isn't good, right?" And he said, "If Scott Johnson
See, I feel bad. I brought that on you by correcting your metaphor. As soon as I do that, then that person feels like, I get to jump on Scott because Tom changed his metaphor.
Anybody in our shared audience already knows that I am gloriously bad at metaphors, and it's fun on most of my shows. So this guy is probably just new, doesn't know, and it's fine. Doesn't know what I'm selling.
You're a giraffe eating eucalyptus with metaphors, my friend.
That's right. That's right. I've always said it. Finally, someone else says it.
Just say it.
What the heck is going on, Adobe?
I love your metaphors. Don't ever stop.
I'm not going to change. Change it for nobody.
Don't go changing.
Try and please me.
Whoa, what happened to my upload?
Uh-oh.
What's SoundCloud? What do I pay you for?
It's been a little fruity lately.
This track can't be played right now. Well, it's still being processed, but the little bar that says it's being processed went away. That's why I was fooled.
Who's the bigger fool? The fool or the fool who follows him?
You. That's what I would have told Gandalf.
Hey, Gandalf, quit smoking all that halfling weed and get your ass over
Your
here.
mom is a fool.
Fly, you fools.
I still don't understand why they just couldn't have just been on the Eagles from the start and just
Well,
fly
did you hear the theory about that?
Yes. I don't remember it, but I remember following a blog post about it somewhere.
The theory, roughly, was that he had that all set up, and then he got knocked away by the Balrog, and then I don't remember the part of why the Eagles just didn't do it anyway, but his fly, you fools, was meant to be a hint, like, go get in touch with the Eagles and then just fly to Mordor, dude.
Yeah, it's like, it's like telling a 12-year-old, get in the car and drive away. It's like, okay, except I don't never driven a car. I don't know how to drive one. I don't know which direction this interstate will take me. No, take the third exit on the off-ramp, and I'll lead you right by...
I bet Strider knew. They call him Strider.
What if they just strapped it to a giant rock and aimed it at Mount Doom and just hoped they went straight through the volcano top?
Oh, look, it worked.
Giant catapult. Solved everything.
What if they missed, though? You don't get to recover from that.
Oh, no, you do test shots. And if it misses, what are you going to do? Kill a bunch of orcs?
Then the Nazgul just come and find where you're doing your test shots from. Right?
Yeah, but they still takes time. They're not like... They're magical beings, but they're not like instantaneously magically going to show up.
Weird. Does Instagram do 60-second video now? What's that about?
Yeah, that was. I heard that on the DTNS headlines yesterday, Scott.
Dang it! Why don't I hear more Tuesday shows? I heard Mondays.
I don't know. I'm just giving you a hard time.
I got to listen in the mornings instead of forgetting to.
Don't feel like you ever have to listen. I don't want it to be a chore.
I like the show.
I like the show too. I never listened to it.
Although I always say the same thing to people at TMS. It's like, if you don't
know
what I'm talking about, it's because
I don't want people to feel like it's a burden, you know. Yeah, I've done that to myself with shows where I'm like, no, I should really keep listening, and then it's like that just ends up with you not enjoying it. That's not good. All right, I am out of the post. Thanks everyone for watching or listening, however you consume the show. We love you. Thank you for your support, and we'll see you tomorrow.